Good evening, live from Maricopa, Arizona. Sean is on assignment. He may or may not be joining us this evening. He just landed in Fort Lauderdale. He's had a long day of travel woes, which is par for the course, as we know, for him, unfortunately. But he did make it safely, so that's good news. And if we do see him, it's a bonus. But we've got a very special bonus happening here. In the meantime, going to welcome in no soliloquy from me. The Jets have defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets by a 6-1 score. It was as one-sided as the score may suggest after a bit of a sleepy first period by the Jets. But without further ado, Jason Bukala of Sportsnet and the Pro Hockey Group is in the house. Welcome, Jay. How's she going tonight?
Awesome, Kenny. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, beautiful. Great to see you as well. Just a quick thought. I know you tuned into the game, sort of what was expected with Columbus on the back end of a back-to-back. But anything stand out on the Jets front for you? Maybe specifically with a couple of the newcomers who seem to be gelling like they're acting like they're back in Ottawa with the 67s here this evening.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, a couple of things stood out for me. I mean, first of all, I thought I liked their start. The Jets. I liked their start in the first period. Scored a minute and a half in, and then of course they scored early in the second period as well. That really seemed to take the wind out of Columbus for a few minutes there, and then of course the Jets went up 3-0, and it carried on from there. But here's the thing. Hellebuyck was outstanding in the first 10 minutes. I thought when they went up 1-0 that the goaltender kept the Jets in the game for a nice stretch there. And that's what he's capable of. Actually, on balance, if you look at the entire game, Helly was really good right till the final buzzer, wasn't he? Like he made some huge saves. He made a save moving left to right with about 3 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
I don't want to say there's a lot of goalies in the league that won't make that sort of effort. You take a lot of pride in your craft, but it just goes to show you how dialed in he is late in a 6-1 game.
Yeah, no doubt about that. What'd you think of Tofoli? I mean, man, that the pass between the feet is a bit absurd. The shot, both goals they're prime. That's prime Tyler Tofoli. For folks who haven't watched him enough, Jay, what stands out to you most about his game, and maybe just overall body of work, and what are the Jets getting here in the big one of the best for me, one of the best trade deadline acquisitions, especially when you consider the price paid.
Yeah, no, especially with the price paid. I 100% agree with that. I mean, so let's just track all the way back to major junior hockey when I was watching Monahan and Tofoli come through. And, they had a synergy back then. They have an understanding of how to play the game. The thing that jumps out about the acquisitions that the Jets have made, and I'm going to lump Tofoli into this, is you get low maintenance, high delivery pros. So guys that you can fit right in your room, good personality to fit into the Jets dressing room. They're not going to ruffle any feathers. They're just going to be part of the group immediately. Obviously, Tofoli's got Stanley Cup heritage there. He's won. He's had some success in playoffs, scored his 30th tonight. Listen, this guy's not a burner. He's not a burner between the blue lines necessarily. But what he is he's crafty as all can be. So he's got a wicked stick, great touch, great hands, knows how to play the game. Like the goal he scored late in the game in the third period. I mean, that's just getting above the play in the right area, knocking down a pass, and obviously going in and doing what he does, which is finish. So, hey, the Jets got something going there. I'm hoping that Monahan on the bumper, that power play, the way it looked even early in the game tonight, I really like that grouping of five in the first unit.
I love the first goal by Tofoli. Just the way the whole play, just such a smart job of timing from Monahan, right? I mean, that play, you don't get going north if he's either too slow or too quick. It's just such a simple, subtle backhand pass, but he knows, right? Tofoli knows that Monahan is there. Monahan accelerates through the neutral zone, gets it to Ehlers. Ehlers just finds Tofoli, and that's the beauty of the play, right? Tofoli, as you mentioned, not the fleetest of foot, but he found a way to get himself into a scoring position after a very impressive zone entry by both Monahan and Ehlers. Man, how about you? Like when you saw him in junior, did he have this level of hockey IQ, or is that something that he has had to? Yeah, okay, that's something that's always been there with him.
The one thing with both Monahan and Tofoli as they've come through, like as a scout, my general rule of thumb is there's three things. As we know, the NHL is a track meet. It's gotten even quicker since these two guys came into the league. But let's just speak on Tofoli specifically for a second. There's three things you look for in an elite prospect. First of all, is foot speed. Second of all, his hockey brain. And then third, his compete when the games get really hard, because obviously there's no easy days in the NHL. So if you're not, a pure burner like Ehlers even, in transition with the puck through the neutral zone, you have to have that hockey brain to be able to find quiet ice and adapt to how the play is developing in front of you. Those are the things that Tofoli does exceptionally well. He has his whole career. That's why he's wanted everywhere he goes. It's unfortunate, I guess, that he's had to pack his bags probably more often than he would have liked over the years. But it also says something about how valuable he is to teams around the league.
And then too, I'm always just fascinated by this. I mean, he seems like he's a low heartbeat type of guy, and by that I mean he doesn't get overwhelmed by the stage when it gets bigger. To me, the low heartbeat is a compliment because he never gets rattled if anything's happening around him, and whether the game is going well or not going poorly, he seems to always be able to sort of stay at a stable level, where some guys, you get all the erratic kind of behavior in their game. I mean, how would you as a scout kind of view that, and is that something that you always saw with Tyler as well?
Yeah, 100%. So that's when high leverage, every game from now on out is a high leverage game. Let's be honest. I mean, the Jets are 5th overall, but really they're trending like they could be a President's Cup team by the end of the year. Who knows, right? Or President's Trophy team. It doesn't really matter that much. But what I'm saying to you is every game is a high leverage game, and guys who adapt under the highest amount of stress and still play to their identity, that's high level hockey IQ. The panic threshold has never been too high to the point where exactly how you just described it. I'll put it to you this way. If he's got the puck on his stick in a high leverage situation in game 4 in the playoffs and it's an elimination game or game 7, you can just count on him being the pro that he is. And that's a gift. It really is a gift.
And speaking of gifts, how about the breakaway goal? That hesitation was not by accident, right? I mean, that's totally to freeze the goalie, and then he goes bar down, right? I mean, that again, just such a, again, I don't want to be gushing here for the next an hour about Tyler Tofoli, though I could. That, to me, that was, again, he's not fleet of foot, but nobody could catch him, right? I mean, isn't that the beauty of that breakaway right there?
Yeah, the read and react is on point, right? And he's got. Again, great puck touch, great read, great finish. Whereas Leakins, I mean, he's on the verge of having a nervous breakdown by the end of that game. You could just see he's ready to freak out. And listen, let's not get over the moon here, though. This game was a must-have on this road trip.
Yeah.
It's going to get a lot harder from this point going forward. The good news with the Jets too. Let's not forget that if Hellebuyck needs a day off on this run, which he very likely will, like Brossoit's been excellent as well. So, you've got that tandem there. Brossoit's on a great run himself. And, I like where they're at as a team. I like the look of the group. I think there's some synergy there. I know it's a tough situation when the Perfettis of the world have to sit out games. And then Logan Stanley, I thought was really good tonight, outside of his goal. Hey, this guy can rip pucks. I've seen it forever in junior hockey back in the day. He's not really that in the NHL at 6'7", but when he gets a chance, he can get it on goal. But they got some healthy scratches sitting up in the booth that are itching to get in. And it's a nice problem to have because it adds that depth.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, Rick talked about it. I mean, the plan was not to, sit out the same 3 guys 2 games in a row, but he was so happy with how they played, especially defensively on Friday, that he just left that, I'm going to say 4th pairing. I don't think that's really doing a service to Nate Schmidt after the season that he's had, but essentially he's been bumped to the 4th pairing, even if it's just momentarily. I love the fact that he kept Gustafsson in. I mean, he doesn't get a point on the one play, but it's his forecheck that makes that play, right? That play doesn't happen without a good forecheck. And again, let's just dig in on the goaltending quickly here before we talk a little bit more about the depth, Jay. I didn't even know this, but it sounds like Brossoit would need to get to 25 games in order to get his name on the Jennings. I mean, as an organization, would that matter to them? I mean, especially knowing the contribution that Laurent Brossoit has made to this team, would that be something that they were, obviously they wanted to get him to at least 22 or 23. Like, do you almost consider 2 relief appearances for Brossoit if the games are manageable, or how would an organization view that, or would they just know that he contributed to the Jennings if they are able to close it out in the last 15 games, or would that even matter at all? Just given how much they value Brossoit and knowing the relationship between the 2 goalies, I mean, how do you think the Jets would be viewing this scenario here in the last 15?
I judge Hellebuyck as part of the leadership group in Winnipeg. So I think what you're going to see there is like goaltenders, they read each other better than anybody else in the room, right? Obviously, and the goaltending coach as well. But having said that, I think that it would be a nice story for them to get them to 25 games. I think that the tandem would appreciate that. But the flip side of it, Kenny, is where are they in the standings? Because it's a horse race in their division. And I'm not discounting what Brossoit can do. I believe in this guy. Like, I think he can stop pucks in high leverage situations at this time of year right now, given where his game's at. I'm okay with that. But, we really have to kind of bounce it off our starter. I know that in my past history with like Roberto and stuff in Florida, we were always talking to him about, how he felt. And I think they'll do the same thing there. But if they have a chance, I think they'll do it. But it's going to depend on the standing points.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I made a pretty bold proclamation. I cannot see a scenario where Brossoit is no less than a 1B, and I think he is deserving of a 1A opportunity, Jay. Goaltending has been a story around the entire league this season. Do you pinpoint a couple of scenarios where you could see him being a 1A, or is he going to have to still battle it as a 1B? I mean, Sean mentioned LA as a great example, and for me, I still believe that he'd be a perfect partner for Joseph Woll in Toronto with the Maple Leafs, among other options that would be available. But those two stand out for me. And I mean, maybe a third could be Edmonton. I mean, they're comfortable with Skinner, but I mean, now you have a little bit bigger push. I know it'd be difficult with Campbell unless they buy him out, but how do you view him on the open market come July 1st? And maybe could the Jets acquire an asset? Might there be a team that trades for the rights, thinking that they want to make him the number one before he even gets to July 1st?
Interesting. I think there's a threshold in his game. So 1B would be my ceiling. Definitely not 1A. And the reason I don't say 1A, now listen, I will preface this by saying that NHL starters nowadays, it's not like the Grant Fuhr, Mike Keenan years where you're running them out there 76 times, like that never happens anymore. So if you can get 60 games out of your number one at the ceiling, that's obviously kind of where we're at in today's NHL. Brossoit is not he's not a 50 game guy for me. So he's a split. He's a 50-50 guy. So the cost association is affordable because of that. Am I comfortable with him being in that role? I am. Other teams like New Jersey should be, taking a look at that. Like, Jake Allen's got another year on his deal. Where are they going with their goaltending? Could that be a perfect, 1A, 1B type thing there in New Jersey that comes to my LA? I think Sean's onto that as well. But do I trust him? Absolutely. Do I trust him beyond a certain threshold? Yeah, that would be my hesitation. So I think you can get 40 games out of this guy and really good, solid 35 out of those 40 where the team doesn't have to rescue him out of, that kind of muddy middle of performances.
Yeah, totally fair. And, just as someone who's seen, kind of goalies that have a huge workload, we've talked a lot about the importance of keeping Hellebuyck fresh for the playoffs. So he's not, playing 65, 67. What's the value to him being at that 57, 58 range come April 20th when the real games begin?
Again, he's a veteran guy, part of the leadership group. Nobody knows his body better than Hellebuyck does. So, again, depending on where we're at as a team, and we're getting that time of year as well where behind the scenes, your coaching staff are starting to break down. We all prep for games. These are singular. We're going in to play Columbus tonight. We're going to go play these are one-offs as we trend towards the end of the season. But as we get closer, call it inside 12 games, your video team is going to be looking at breaking down potential opponents and creating more and more intel. So if you're close to being first in the division, this is a long answer. If you're close to being first in the division, or if you finish third in the division, are we still comfortable with our matchup, our projected matchup at that point? And that goes into how you throw Hellebuyck to the Wolves at the end of the year as well, because your team concept, you want to get the best matchup possible. And if everything looks like on balance, it's about the same, then you're going to him and saying, hey, do you need a night off? Do you need a maintenance day, whatever the case may be? And that's the good news, isn't it? You got Brossoit who can get in there and give you a good start.
We'll go back to the forwards in a minute, but I'm going to dig in on the defense a little. I mean, we talked about the additions up front. I mean, I was curious for your thoughts on the Colin Miller addition. Just played the 2 games. Obviously, he plays a little bit of an economical game. Not always flashy outside of the big shot, but I thought he's fit in pretty well on the back end. I'll be curious if there's going to be a rotation or if it's going to be one guy's job or the other down the stretch. But just your initial thoughts on the Jets picking up Colin Miller, and also then we'll dig into maybe some of the reasoning behind they got Miller and didn't maybe go into the next tax bracket, considering they wanted to keep, to prevent themselves from having Stanley or Gustafsson be subjected to the waiver wire at that time of year.
Yeah, so I think that is definitely part of that strategy, no doubt. I like Miller. I've always liked Miller. I think he's a serviceable pro. I think that he's played on several different teams, but if you look at what he provides, besides the fact that he's a right shot, he's mobile, he's competitive, he's useful. He's got a solid hockey brain. And I believe he's the type of guy, the type of athlete who's programmed okay. If we're all competitive people, but they're programmed to understand that I can be in and out, but I better be ready at the drop of a dime. And make no mistake, if the Jets are going to go on a run here in the spring and hopefully into June, it's going to take 8D, Kenny. There's not too many Stanley Cup winners in forever now that have just rolled out the same 6 guys. It takes like 7 or 8, and that's the history behind it, and they're in a good spot that way with their depth.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, they're fortunate enough to have Ville Heinola and Kyle Capobianco down in the minors if they have to go to 9 and 10. But Miller's a guy who's interesting, Jay, because he fits that same mold as the guy who they had looked at previously, whether it would be at the trade deadline or in free agency. A guy kind of they had circled on their list. They're familiar with him from obviously the 2018 games against Vegas, but he sort of seems to have, to me, he's sort of evolved. He's still the same player, but his role has shifted from being, running the second or first power play to kind of being a guy who is, third pairing puck mover, not getting a ton of time. I mean, what's it been like to see him, or do you see maybe some growth in his game, or do you see an evolution in the player at all as he sort of advances his experience level?
No, I think he is what he is, and that's fine. I think that I call him a 2AD. I think that he's a depending on what they do with their power play, like he is a guy that can fit into that role. He can rip a puck from distance, he can manage it from the top. So there are some things there that he can provide the Jets. But listen, this is a 2AD. I think he's a bottom pairing guy. He could be a 5 in a pinch. He can elevate. So that's the thing, right? Like he can elevate and he can look like a 5, maybe even a 4 on any given night. But really, for me, if we're going to go on a deep run, he's our 6. And he's that fallback guy who we know we can count on in a variety of roles if required. Again, like Tofoli, it's a pro's pro. It's a guy that understands what it takes. He's had that happen in Vegas. He understands coming from Vegas, and look where he's been. He's been in Boston. He's been in Vegas.
Right.
He's been through these organizations that kind of have a culture, and that's a nice add.
Yeah, winning program. And I mean, let's not forget, we've seen Dallas enough in the playoffs to know that Rick Bowness always loved, Joel Hanley never started the series very often, but when the games mattered, Rick often was tapping him on the shoulder instead of one of those younger prospect type of players. So I find that to be interesting and sort of makes sense in a lot of ways as well. I don't want to leapfrog the second pairing, but since I have you on, I mean, you have a great appreciation for the entire league. How would you describe the run that Josh Morrissey has been on, especially offensively, Jay? And we understand that Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar have kind of made it mostly a 2-horse race, but how's he viewed around the league, and what are you seeing from him during this not even last block? It's basically since the All-Star, since the calendar flipped to January.
Yeah, like he's right back where he needs to be offensively compared to like last year, for example. I love Morrissey. So Morrissey's a kind of guy that can do a variety of things. He's not just, so when you talk about the Hughes of the world, even the Makars, like those guys are, they're more agile. There's more pizzazz to their game. They leap off the ice a little bit. They come to you real quickly with what they can do, quick escapes to small areas. And then obviously bursts up the ice with the puck on their stick. Not that Morrissey can't do that, but it's everything else that he does exceptionally well for me. He's one of the top defensemen in the league. I'll have him on my team any day of the week. He's affordable. He does everything for the Jets. It's not just offense. And you know what? He's sneaky occasionally when he gaps up on a guy. He'll blow a guy up in the playoffs coming through the neutral zone, and people will forget. They'll sleep on him. He's got that in him as well. Love that guy. He's one of the top, I consider, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, definitely one of the top 5 defensemen in the second half of the game in the entire league for me.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And to your point, I mean, he nearly decapitated a couple of Ducks in the first period. He took a couple runs that kind of, like you said, kind of uncharacteristic runs, but they're not really. If you go back to his time and whether it was PA or Kelowna, he wasn't
Oh,
afraid to step up in those areas. But how about you? I mean, we will let's do a little quick pit stop on the second pairing before we move along. Just maybe big picture thoughts on a guy like Brendan Dillon, who's played in the Stanley Cup final, with the San Jose Sharks back in 2016 when he was a little bit more of a role player. And I think that I know that there's still some up and down to Neil Pionk's game, but I think one of the biggest developments for the Jets this year, Jay, to me, is Pionk's ability to have a bounce back year after. I mean, I know they were injury plagued the last 2 years, but his defensive zone work just wasn't at the same level. We know he's gone through an incredible emotional situation with the loss of one of his best friends in Adam Johnson. But how do you view that second pairing, and what have they been able to provide for the Jets this year, and how important is it for them heading into playoff time?
yeah, stability, right? So Pionk leads the team in hits. I think he's like over 180 hits now. He's an active player on the back end. When this is the thing with Pionk. I love his compete. He can get places ahead of time. Like he's quick, right? He's quick to space. He obviously gives you better than the secondary offense. When his brain slows the game down enough to manage it appropriately is when he's at his best. I find that that's much more what I'm seeing out of his game on balance for the entire year this year. There's been segments where it's like, okay, but they all go through that, Kenny. Like, it's a marathon, right? They all go through it.
No doubt.
The good news for me here is that pairing, the way that it sits right now, I like the synergy between them, right? They can shut you down. They can play physical. Pionk can hop into a play, produce that offense. It's a bonus if Dillon does it. But don't forget, Dylan DeMello is like waiting on deck to do whatever you need me to do. Dylan DeMello is like a plus 32. He's a glue guy that does it. He's a guy that flies under the radar, I think, for a lot of people in the entire National Hockey League. What a glue guy he is, and how much safety does that gives pause, doesn't it, to your coaching staff? So if in a worst case scenario, Pionk gets too hectic and we got to like dial him back a little bit, now you're talking about that depth. You're talking about Miller. You're talking about DeMello, right? Whatever it takes to win hard games in playoffs. There's no favors given out in playoffs. Your body of work in regular season gets you the opportunity to be in game one in the playoffs in the lineup. But beyond that, you got to manage it. That's where the good news is. You got those glue guys waiting and behind. And I think that's better for Pionk too. I think that he knows that. And he's been way better. Like he's a plus player this year. Last year, he's a minus player, I believe, for the entirety of the year. And he's much more trustworthy. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and speaking of trust, I mean, what's it meant for Josh Morrissey to have a stable partner in Dylan DeMello? I mean, a guy who has really provided stability. I mean, man, if you're Ottawa, aren't you kicking yourself for not extending him? Like, look at. I'm not saying it's all because of him, but Thomas Chabot is nowhere near the same player he was when DeMello was on his pairing with him as well, and I don't think that's a coincidence. What has he meant, kind of big picture, and how would he be viewed in free agency if the Jets can't get an extension done before July 1st? Because I know he's understated on the points side, but man, this is a guy, his body of work since leaving San Jose has been pretty impressive with the type of partners he's been able to not just help, but augment really well.
Yeah, that's well said. Augment, like he complements the Morrisseys. He'd complement the Morgan Rileys. He'd complement, in Montreal with some of the youth they have, like the Caden Goulies and these guys that are coming through their system. This is a guy that plays the game the right way, and he's a low maintenance pro. I really like when I think of the Winnipeg Jets. These are the types of guys that I think are Jets. You know what I mean? Like their personality, their persona, the way they carry themselves. I believe the way that they are in your community. These are the types of guys that keep the room together and then recognize their value in relation to their D partner in this situation. So I don't need him to produce any offense. Let's be clear. What I need him to do is manage the game in front of him, go get a puck when it's on his side of the ice, move it to open space, launch the attack, and then keep the rest of the game in front of him still. Let everybody else do what they do well. If he chips in some offense here and there, that's a bonus for me. But he's a guy that you can roll out there, in my estimation, for 25 minutes a night in playoffs and trust what you're going to get every time he rolls over the boards.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, too, you talk about guys being pros. It's not easy for guys at the age, in the early 30s for both, DeMello and Brendan Dillon to be part of the leadership core and then seeing everyone around them get taken care of, yet still not let their level of play dip, knowing that they want to stick around here. So, I'll just ask you flat out. I mean, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, can you sign both of those players in the offseason? Can you extend them?
Oh, I absolutely think you can extend them. There's a way to do this. I don't have their cap in front of me right now, but given the fact that it is going up and there'll be some flexibility, perhaps in the lineup, somebody's going to have to be sacrificed. We all like that is the NHL today. So it's going to be, we talk about, the Brossoits, and somebody's going to have to go. Who's that going to be? Not sure. What's going to happen down the road with Tofoli, all these, the Monahans, where's the fit? So there's only so much money to go around. I believe, though, that if you take a look at a guy like DeMello, defenseman, first of all, when I worked for Dale Talon in Florida, he always told me, a defenseman has to play 200-plus games in the NHL before you actually know what he is, okay? So when you do that, and then you get into where DeMello is now in his career, his fitness is great, his pace is fine, his game management is fine. He's going to he's due for a significant raise. Somebody's going to give it to him, so that's going to be the challenge for sure. On DeMello more than Dylan. I think DeMello is going to be the guy that gets paid more for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, and then we'll move back to back up front here for a minute. Just staying on the free agency theme, the Jets have been trying to find and stabilize a 2C for a very long time, and we've seen how seamless the transition has been for Sean Monahan. What's the ceiling in terms of what he's going to get in free agency, Jay, this summer? I know it's still a ways away, but I mean, is this a guy that can be had for around 5, or is he going to be having to be north of 6 in order to lock him down, given how hard it is to find second-line centers? And, I mean, man, you could even call him a 1B. This is a guy who's been a full-on number 1 before the injuries. And, yeah, for all the folks who said Sean Monahan's skating is suffering because of the hip and some of the other issues, they're not watching Sean Monahan because to me, he's probably skating better than I've ever seen him. You would have a better book on that than I would. But anyways, what are your thoughts on what could be available to him in free agency?
He's skating way better than he was in Calgary, when he was banged up and, before the surgery and the injuries. It's going to be 5 or less. I believe.
Okay.
It's not going to be in that 6 region. I see the value in him, and but he's the second tier still. Let's not overhype this to the point where we're comparing him to a really high 2. So like in Montreal, for example, like Suzuki's carrying the load as 1, but he's not. Can he really a 1? Like he's a high 2, if you get my drift. So
yeah, I do.
If you use him as the guy on the dartboard, I think Monahan's going to want some term in his next deal if he can have it. And I think if that means that you leave a little bit on the table, then so be it. And a lot of things are going to come into the factor here. Living in Canada, playing in Canada, the way that I don't want to be that downer, but these athletes are getting paid millions of dollars. Our taxation in Canada stinks. Let's just be honest. It stinks for you. It stinks for me. It stinks for these guys. And that factors into it for some of them, where they want to play next. So, it's not going to be 6. It's going to be closer to 5. And I'll tell you this, that guys like Dubois, who was here before, I'd pay this guy. Dubois overpaid for what he produces in LA for me, and that's a whole story for something else. The fit for the team.
Yeah.
So if you get him for 5 and he does what he does for your organization, I think that's a win.
That's you're making me feel better because the number I had was 5 or just north of it on a for sure. I'd go for sure 3 years, and I think it might take to keep in Winnipeg might take the 4th year. But again, we'll play that by ear and see where it takes us from there.
His camp will ask for his camp's going to ask for 6. They're going to ask for 6 or 6.25, and you guys are going to counter with 5, and then it's going to work itself out, and then that's where term will come in.
Oh, no, too. Just because we have you on, what stood out to you about Mark Scheifele's season that he's having? And man, you noticed it the other night when he wasn't in the lineup. Boy, do they ever miss him down the middle. Speaking of centers, and this is a clear-cut number 1 center that's added a 2-way game.
Yeah. Well, let's just start with that. His plus minus compared to last year is literally, I don't have it in front of me, but I would hazard a guess it's got to be plus 40 in the right direction. He's gone from being a minus 19 or whatever he was last year, I don't care, to what he is today. And it's a huge swing in the other direction. I believe personally, when I look at the Winnipeg Jets as a team this year compared to what I was looking at them last year, that there was a huge disconnect in the room. I think that the disconnect, everybody, including your listeners, when you go to work every day and if you're not 100% happy about your environment, you don't get the most out of you, right? Like that's the way we are as human beings. That's how we're programmed. I believe there was a disconnect in the room last year with certain people they had there. I think that when they signed their extensions, it was a commitment to the Jets organization. But beyond that, he also bought into what was needed out of him in the big picture. So I didn't think he was capable of being this good all around. Listen, he's not going to be super elite defensively. But is he way better? Absolutely. I call him very good now, where before I would call him, watching a lot of plays develop in my zone, which was a concern.
Right on. And before we get to the prospects, I just want to get your thoughts on Nikolaj Ehlers. I mean, obviously, a ton of debate in the market over, the minutes played, and Rick always talks about it's the shifts and the shift length, not the minutes. How do you view Ehlers? And man, again, the last couple games are great examples of when he's on his game. The symphony, he's conducting the symphony, and it's beautiful to watch. But maybe just from an organizational standpoint, maybe you can shed a little bit of light on maybe how a guy like Nikolaj, somebody, I think it was Scott Wheeler that mentioned it. Have you seen a more talented 60-point player? And what will it take for someone to like him who has that skill set to elevate into being kind of closer to a point per game kind of guy?
Yeah, the tease has always been there that way for me. Going way back into junior, I mean, he could literally take over a shift with his speed, wheel behind the net, pick up a puck, lead the power play breakout, whatever it was in Halifax back then. But, I still believe that he can catch lightning in a bottle and get into that 75 to 84 point range. I really do believe that. I'm not so much worried about shift length and time on ice. Like on balance, the Jets are one of those teams that kind of like to spread it around more than a lot of teams. Like if you were going to look at the Colorado right now, for example, like Rantanen and McKinnon have been averaging north of 23 minutes a night, those two guys. Okay. So they're going to the wall hard with the top of their lineup. The Jets don't have to do that. They can, spread it out a little bit. And let's not forget, Ehlers is a darting player. So when you're an explosive guy, your fatigue threshold might arrive sooner than some other guys just because of the way you play the game, right? Hey, listen, it's all about team results for me. If Ehlers is a plus 15, plus 20 guy, he's producing 3/4 of a point a game and playing hard up and down the 200 feet. I'm all in on that more than I am on cutting corners, getting extra ice. And if he goes to 80 points and he's a 0 in the plus minus index, right. Now, like, what are we a better team? I'd ask that question.
Not a great trade-off. Before we get you out of here, I just want to ask you a couple quick thoughts on a couple of the top prospects. Obviously, it was a big weekend for Rutger McGroarty and company. A bit of an upset, knocking out the Golden Gophers with the 2-1 win. Rutger having an assist on the game winner again. He's had a big playoff in that Big Ten tournament, Jay. They're almost assured, essentially, now being in the Sweet 16 or whatever they're going to call it on their way to the Frozen Four. Thoughts on his second half since we talked to you, I think, just after the World Junior, but thoughts on his second half and maybe where he might fit in, provided the Jets get him signed here at some point after his season is over.
Well, so I have been into Michigan a few different times here recently. You and I kind of were texting back and forth a couple of weeks ago. He's been... it's a double-sided answer here. So in his last 10-game segment, he's got like 16 points. And these have been, we talk about high leverage games. These are really important games. Michigan was a bubble team to make the tournament. And they've elevated as the games continue to get harder and harder. And he's been part of that equation. Okay. So producing at the hardest time of year, he's being used in all situations. So his brain is great. He's producing offense. He goes to the hard areas. He's a load to handle in the trenches. All those things are great. If they get knocked out in the first round so they're playing Michigan State in the Big Ten final next week. If they get knocked out in the first round, of the NCAAs the following week, I'm curious to see what the Jets do. Here's where I'm at with it, though. His skating hasn't been a huge concern. Okay, like it has not been, but I will say that the NHL game, when you really break them down, like consistently break them down and watch them live for a long period of time, he's going to have to go to another level still, or like Tyler Tofoli, understand how to kind of pick my spots a little bit more. But he's leading Michigan. You can't deny it. Like he's carried that team on his back.
talked to a lot of scouts in the last couple of weeks around different rinks. Can he be more than just a black ace? Could he get into the lineup at some point, or what do you think on that front?
I think he's an ace. For me right now, I don't want to overhype the athlete. I think that
Right.
would be unfair to him. It would be unfair to him. It would also be unfair to the guys like Perfetti, who have already scored, 13, 14 goals in the league this year.
Yes, sir.
So he's an ace for me right now. So that's where I'd be at.
Right on. And just a quick one on Elias Solomonson, Jay. I mean, I expect him to maybe join the Moose when his team gets knocked out. What do you think about on that front?
Love Solomonson, love Rashevsky. Good news stories. Solomonson can provide better than secondary offense occasionally. He's got more in him than people realize. And again, he's his game management. So similar to the guys we talked about here, Kenny on the back end, those guys that manage the game properly. They're big, they're strong, they keep it in front of them. That's Solomonson. So he's going to be at worst a 5 when he arrives full time for the Jets, in my estimation. And he's going to tease you with some secondary offense occasionally.
Right on. And you mentioned Rashevsky. I gave you a homework assignment and you delivered. So I want to, just for folks who are unaware of the 5th round draft pick, he has one more year left on his KHL deal. Been scoring a lot of goals the last couple of years. What's the latest? And do you think the Jets can get him signed at the end of the next, not this KHL season, but at the end of the next one? And what do you see as his potential as an NHLer once he gets over here?
He's a top 6 NHL scoring forward in my estimation. I would say that he leans a scorer more than distributor, but he's got great pace off the rush, and he's creative one-on-one with the puck on his stick. One thing that stood out for me a lot in playoffs over in the KHL when he's played for Dynamo right now, and they're playing Tractor, Chelyabinsk, he's going to the hard areas way more. So a lot, instead of just scoring goals off the rush or getting creative coming off the flank, he's scoring goals around the crease. Even if they just kind of bound off him, he's in that area. So that's been a positive. He's had a fantastic year there. He's got 1 year left. I reached out to the people that I've dealt with in Russia in the past that I trust, for some of my decision-making that we made in the past. And they believe that it's a maybe still. So they still believe that there's going to be a lot of politics being played this offseason especially, and it's going to carry on into next season. I'm hoping the Jets get him over here. He's an NHL player.
Right on. And sorry, I did say last one twice now, but this is the real last one. Players referenced it after the game. So did Rick Bowness. We know the Jets have kind of been beating up on non-playoff teams lately. What are your thoughts on the marquee matchup on Tuesday at MSG? And how do you see the Jets stacking up here as they face the Rangers?
They stack up well, first of all. I'm going to be interested to see how they start. So the first 5 minutes of every period, and integrating their will with their skill. If you get my drift there, they've got the Trubas of the world. They got some big bodies in New York, but I believe on balance that the Jets are more built to be physically capable come playoff time. The goaltending will win out, and Hellebuyck looked really good tonight. Looked dialed in. That's going to be the big test on I believe Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir.
This is going to be a big matchup for them. And I don't care if you beat up on listen, everybody beats up on lesser lights. The New York Rangers have a great record. Look at their division. They play those teams more than anybody else. So I'm not buying that. This is the National Hockey League. The Jets have got the hardest division, arguably, in the league right now. So every night's been a hard night for the Jets. I'm not buying that. They're going to be ready on Tuesday. I like the way they prepare, and I'm expecting them to be up for the challenge.
Tremendous, Jay. Thanks so much. As always, you've made our listeners and myself a little smarter from taking time with us. Thanks for the investment. Enjoy the stretch run, and we'll try to sneak you back on maybe one more time before the real fun begins, maybe for a little playoff preview action, Jay.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. I'm not that smart. You're in Arizona playing golf, and I'm in London where it's still snowing here for some reason today. So enjoy the weather and your time off there. Thanks for having me on, Kenny. Take care, pal.
Right on, my man. Take care. Thanks for having me. Have a great week ahead here. Take care. Jason Buchler, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Cheers. And sorry about that, folks. We have another special guest here, but before we get to that, now we know one of the many reasons that Sean has such incredible value to the show, and I'm missing him when he's not here. I've gotten through 40 minutes and not read one single ad read here. So before I welcome my good friend and colleague Mike McIntyre on, let's get working through a little bit of business here before we go too far. Now this is perfect. So now I've put up from our good friends at Cambrian Credit Union. Who I and Sean and myself both members, and proud to say so. The Jets leaving Nikolaj Ehlers on a line with Tyler Tofoli and Sean Monahan. That was a play that really paid off. And the Cambrian payoff loan, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster and can save you that help you save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. And Mike is wearing a good looking suit, but if you're looking to be looking sharp like Sean and I try to do on a normal basis, especially at home games, go visit our Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi on Corridon Avenue. Tell them Kenny and Rennie sent you, and they'll have you looking dapper. And one more before we welcome Mike in. If you have realty needs you would like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Roll LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of this community, including this podcast. Thank you to him. And without further ado, we're going to have to get a song made for him at some point. We're going to go straight into Nationwide Arena, home of the Cannon. Mike, tell the truth. Did you jump at the 5-0 Cannon exploding goal by Brendan Gaunce?
Kenny, thanks for the concern. I actually braced myself for that one. But I still jumped a little bit. I really jumped the opening cannon, like when the like that one, I must admit, completely took me by surprise. My hair went a little grayer from it, and it's funny. I saw Connor Hellebuyck in the dressing room after the game. Please don't mistake this at all for me being a fan of the Jets. As you know, Kenny, the only thing we cheer for are quick-moving games and early deadlines and clean copy. We don't cheer for the Jets for or against. However, the one exception is when I'm here in Columbus, I cheer for as few goals to go in the Winnipeg net, strictly because that limits the cannon blast. So I did thank Connor Hellebuyck for some of those saves earlier in the game that spared my ears from a bigger show than what would have otherwise occurred.
Absolutely tremendous. And with that in mind, what a great time for the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call handed out to Mike McIntyre, even though he knew it was coming. The Pristine Roofing wake-up call is going to Mike McIntyre and also Dan Robertson, who admitted on the broadcast that he's been coming there for 10 years to Nationwide Arena and still missed out and jumped at the first sign of the cannon. That means it's time to call North End Rick at 204-981-6289 or call the main line, Pristine Roofing, 204-237-7663. Tell them once again, Kenny and Rennie sent you, and we're also very thankful. And also tell them, too, our good friends at Pristine Roofing and Siding are giving away a free roof to someone in need. If you know someone who might fit that description, get in touch with our good friends at Pristine Roofing and Siding. And thank you to them, as always, for their support. Michael, you were in the building. What stood out about today's 6-1 victory? And then we're going to get to some other interesting stuff after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all saw the same thing. The Jets, they get that early goal, obviously, from Kyle Connor, which is kind of the way you want to start off a long road trip. Get a quick start. But then I thought the Jets really, other than Connor Hellebuyck, they got really loose there for a while. And the Blue Jackets had no shortage of really good scoring chances. Like, the Jets, in a way, they were lucky to get out of that first period up a goal. They could have been down a goal if not for some real solid play. And the Connor Hellebuyck storyline, I mean, you look at the final score, 6-1, so nobody's talking about Connor Hellebuyck. If he's leaky early in that game, the Jets would have been chasing that game. Why? I have no explanation. Rick Bowness didn't have an explanation. I guess the biggest thing, though, is the Jets responded. Rick Bowness said that they talked about it after the first intermission. And, the Jets came out. They got another quick one, I think 70 seconds into the second. And unlike the first, they didn't take the foot off the gas at all or throw her into reverse. I'm using that, Kenny, because I see there's a beautiful car in behind you. The Jets hit the accelerator and full throttle And, we were
Well
reminded,
played, by the way. Well played. And that's the
yeah,
Monterey Mist Ford Thunderbird Collector's
beauty.
Edition. Yes, yes.
We've talked a lot about how good defensively this Jets team and some of their offensive struggles. I think we were reminded a little bit tonight that, this team, they don't do it a lot, but they certainly have the talent to put up goals in bunches. And, we saw that with a huge second period. Normally the Jets save that kind of production for the third period, Kenny.
Yeah.
They've been such a great third period team. Tonight it was the second, and they took over that game. To me, I think the biggest takeaway is what that second line, and we may not have to call them a set. We might have to call them the other first line if they keep playing the way they did tonight. That's been a storyline pretty much all season long, right? Rick Bowness has been trying to find the right mix, the right chemistry to get a second scoring line going. Well, again, it's early. Again, the quality of competition what hasn't been the greatest the last two games, to say the least.
Yep.
However, the chemistry that line's showing, and to me, Kenny, the big play like that through the leg, that ridiculous pass. And I asked Tyler Tofoli after, like, how do you do that when you barely had any chance to practice with these guys? And it was interesting that he said they actually talked about that very play just before it happened on the bench. Like, they're communicating.
Yeah.
I mean, if these guys give them a little more reps, give them a few more practices with what we've seen already from that trio, if they can start to really, get that chemistry going towards the playoffs here, the Jets have, forget about a strong second line. They have another really strong first line. And, you hope Gabe Vilardi obviously can come back at some point. And I suspect that, he probably would slide in at this point where Alex Iafallo is.
Yep, for sure.
And that is a potentially lethal top six if everybody's clicking on all cylinders.
Man, I loved watching you talking to Tyler, and you basically were asking him if he had eyes in the back of his head, and he was kind of like, no biggie. We were just talking about that on the bench. If I get the puck down low, I might just go between my legs and see if I find someone there. And I love the other one too. I was looking for Monty and he just missed it. But I actually, to me, it was, again, I'd have to look at the replay again, but like that was almost like a Lemieux moment where he left it for Iginla at the Olympics. It looked like he thought it was going to be too tight to take the shot. I think actually Monahan might have been able to shoot it himself, and he left it for Ehlers, and then Ehlers obviously ripped it home. But man, you've been in the building. I mean, I was obviously there on Friday as well, but what are you seeing from Tyler Tofoli, and what is he meant for the Jets in such a short time, outside of the 4 goals and 5 points in the last 4 games here? Just what kind of sense do you get from his teammates? I mean, I loved you shared Logan Stanley's answer for those who weren't tuned in, but man, it's been impressive to watch, and this is just the beginning. He just seems like he's scratching the surface here, to be honest.
He really does. And the thing to me, Kenny, is it really looks effortless with Tyler Tofoli. Like, this isn't a guy where it doesn't look like he's doing anything that requires a ton of exertion or effort. And I say that in that's not to say he's lackadaisical. It's just, this is a really good hockey player that obviously is confident in his body. He knows how to play, where to be. The puck seems to follow him around. He's got a great stick. Can't remember if it was that. I think it was on the Ehlers goal where he'd made a nice play to knock a puck down to keep it alive in the offensive zone. He just reminds me a little bit of a lot of the things I thought the first week or two with Sean Monahan, how easy he makes it look. And now they're playing together. And maybe it's not surprising to hear that these guys have been friends for a long time. Seems like some of the similar personality type. Obviously, 2 proven players in this league. And when you look at the price, Rick Bowness the other night was raving again about Kevin Cheveldayoff and the ads that he made. Like, Rick Bowness must feel like a kid at Christmas with the couple shiny new toys that the GM went and got him, because Monahan and now Tofoli, they just seem like they fit in seamlessly. And the other thing, we talk about it a lot, the Jets talk about a lot, the culture, the fit in the room. Don't discount the importance of that. And I think that's another reason this road trip is a big one, Kenny, not just because of, the available points and what it means in the chase for first in the Central and playoff seeding and all that, and playing teams like the Rangers. I think it's also important because the Jets have brought a few new guys in the mix. Monahan, obviously, Tofoli and Miller now. This is a chance for some bonding. They had a team dinner last night. There'll be some other stuff coming up on the road. And that's a valuable thing, especially for a team like the Jets that is tight-knit and, they want to go to battle for each other. And I think we're getting that sense even when you look at what's happening on the blue line. The reaction, I looked at the bench immediately when Logan Stanley scored. It's a 4-0 goal, so, it's not a huge goal, but the bench, erupted, and Logan Stanley erupted, and just seeing in the dressing room after the game, the kidding that was going on back and forth, like guys are really happy for Logan Stanley, like they were happy for Dylan DeMello when he snapped his drought the other day when Nate Schmidt scored. And that includes guys who aren't in the lineup right now, like Dylan Samberg, Colin Miller, Cole Perfetti, Rasmus Kapari. So you get the sense the Jets are really building something here, and this week is going to be a big one in that department.
Yeah, right on. Also, too, I mean, what you saw, again, Rick admitted it today pregame, earlier. His plan was not to sit out. And you and I were talking about this, and maybe even debating a little bit. That what does that say about the Jets that they're able to, essentially just have their fourth pairing stay in the game? And again, this is, I don't consider Nate Schmidt to be a fourth pairing guy, but since the arrival of Colin Miller, he sort of was bumped out of the lineup, even temporarily. So what does it say about them that they're able to just do that? And then they just keep Gustafsson in the lineup, and Cole Perfetti sits again. And again, we're going to circle back on Perfetti in a second because you got a little bit of insight there this morning on that front, Mike. But just for the Jets to be able to, again, and Vladislav Nemestikov is up to 9. So he's about to become the 13th Jets forward, and Josh Morrissey's at 8 goals. He could make it 14. And I think they might even have one other player that could get it to 15. But anyways, long-winded way of saying, what's impressed you about the Jets' depth here as the stretch really starts to heat up here for the final 15 games?
Well, you're right. It's going to serve them well as the schedule, and they're already into the teeth of the busy part of the schedule here. Not so much the competition. They hit the soft spot here these last 2 games for sure. And you can debate whether or not maybe a guy like Cole Perfetti should have been in the lineup one of these games. Maybe playing the Ducks or the Blue Jackets might have been that jolt of confidence a kid like Cole Perfetti might have needed. But I do think it's really interesting that they, as you say, they basically played what you could argue was their 4th D pair tonight over what's probably their 3rd D pair, at least was the other day. And yeah, I mean, I get why Rick Bowness didn't want to change it up. You get the shutout. Nate Schmidt scored. Like, now I guess the question, Kenny, is now Logan Stanley scored. Like, do you take him out? I do think if you're the Jets, you probably do go back. At least I would say to Dylan Samberg, I think is. Agreed. I'd be surprised if he's not in the lineup. Maybe you could keep Schmidt in over Miller, but I don't know. I'd go back. And again, I think everybody understands what's happening here. Just like Dylan Samberg and Colin Miller, they don't view this as punishment or a demotion. They know that there's competition. They know that if the Jets are going to go where they want to go, they're going to need more than 6 defensemen between now and the end of, or mid-June when they want to still be playing hockey. And I think the same goes for the forwards. So yeah, it was an interesting admission from Rick Bowness that he kind of called an audible. But I think, the reasons for it made some degree of sense. As I say, that maybe the one exception for me is I probably would have liked to have seen Cole Perfetti in one of these games because I think it might have been good for him. But as you mentioned, it was interesting to kind of watch practice or the morning skate today.
Yep.
And, they were near the end of the skate. So they were just kind of doing some drills. And I think Rick sort of noticed Cole Perfetti was just kind of standing at the side because he wasn't part of the drill that was going on. And, Rick comes over, and it wasn't just a quick tap or a quick, word. Rick actually got down on his knees and, crouched beside him for a significant amount of time. Like, I'm talking at least 5 minutes. It was mainly a one-sided conversation. Rick Bowness was doing most of the talking. But what I really noticed was how many times he put his arm around Cole Perfetti, on his shoulder. He was patting his back a ton. Like, it looked it looked like a fatherly figure, having a chat with a young kid who's kind of going through probably a bunch of things right now, a bunch of emotions. And, it struck me as one of those moments that, it's probably a teachable moment. It's probably an important moment that, at the time, maybe it doesn't mean much, but it'll be interesting to kind of see when Cole Perfetti gets his next chance and what he can do with it. I think he had a really good game a couple games ago. His game against Nashville, was
Quieter.
quieter for sure. He was really good against Washington, hit 2 posts. Like, he could have broken the drought there. So again, Rick Bowness did say, he flat out said, everybody who didn't play tonight, the plan is to get them into a game or games on this 5 game in what's really like 7.5 days, because they played tonight, right, and they're going to wrap it up next Sunday afternoon. So, he'll get his shot here, whether that's Tuesday or maybe he's got to wait a little bit more. And, I think we've seen guys like Stanley and Schmidt come in and make an impact. I think we'll probably see that from some of these forwards too. Dave Gustafson had a really good game today.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent, no doubt about that. And I mean, as you pointed out with Rick, I mean, no surprise why the Jets had their fourth line, including David Gustafson, hit 10.5 minutes. Looked like Morgan Barron was just under 12. A little bit of bench management, and not just at the fourth line level. Mike, 15-15 for Kyle Connor, and Mark Schiefele 16-51. So I mean and again, if this had been happening in a game where he had been stapled to the bench, we'd have a different conversation. But this was all planned on a team coming out of a flu bug situation, and that has such a taxing schedule on hand, including a big marquee matchup on Tuesday against the New York Rangers. Before we get to our 3 elements, we've got you covered, the lamplighter and keg save of the game. Mike, for the folks who will be picking up, or maybe they've seen it online already, but if they haven't, they should be checking it out at winnipegfreepress.com. And if you wait till the morning for the printed copy of the Winnipeg Free Press, that's fine too, as long as you check it out. Mike, you had a great conversation with Nikolaj Ehlers today about someone who is still, very much part of the, the community in Winnipeg in terms of Patrick Laine and his situation. Maybe shed a little bit of light on that for those who haven't read it yet and plan to check it out.
Yeah, it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I sat in the stands, as you know, Kenny, with some press patrons for a game. And of course, up in the press box, you tend to just focus on what's on the ice. Sitting in the stands a couple of weeks ago, it just struck me like how many Patrick Laine jerseys there still are. Like, and I don't think we've forgotten, but time maybe over time, it's not as prominent anymore. But, this was a guy who, he was the pride of Winnipeg, the toast of Winnipeg. And there's a lot of fans that still.
Winnipeg is good.
Winnipeg is good indeed. And there's a lot of fans that certainly care deeply about Patrick. And I'm sure have been following his struggles this year. When his father passed away, I think a lot of folks, their heart broke for him then. Obviously, he's had some injury issues this year. I think it was his clavicle that he broke back in December. And, he had a real tough time. There had been a healthy scratch early in the season as Pascal Vincent was trying to kind of put his stamp on changing the culture here in Columbus. But Patrick Laine looked like he was on the cusp of coming back. He had been practicing in January. And then the kind of stunning announcement on his own Instagram post saying that he's stepping away from the game, entering the NHL Player Assistance Program, and that it's a mental health thing. That was like almost 2 months ago, Kenny, and there's not really been any update. And in fact, talking to some people here in Columbus, like they're kind of in the dark. They don't know what the future holds in terms of the rest of this year and even going into next year. One guy, though, that does talk to Patrick Laine a lot is Nikolaj Ehlers. Those two were inseparable. We saw it in the dressing room. Fans would have seen it in a lot of the interviews they did. They like to play off each other, kid each other. They really were inseparable. And, it was nice to hear today. Nikolaj Ehlers told me that he still talks to Patrick almost every day. They're in constant touch. And so he had a little more insight, obviously, into what Patrick's going through and mentioned, good days and bad days and how mental health issues can be, they sneak up on you. And I think Nikolaj, he said he's seen just major changes in the NHL in terms of the comfort level of players to admit they need help, to reach out for help. We've seen other players take these steps. These are really important discussions. I'm glad that people like Nikolaj are comfortable talking about them because, as you know, Kenny, there would have been a time probably not that long ago where a player might have declined to talk about this sort of thing. They want to focus on the goals and assists and points. But as Nikolaj told me, he's flat out said this is bigger than hockey. And obviously he said, I hope Patrick comes back without really offering, and whether he's talking about this year or just long term, nobody really knows. But obviously Patrick Laine remains a beloved figure by a lot of people in the Jets organization and the fan base. And so it was good to hear from Nikolaj. I think he said a lot of really important things that resonate with folks. And first and foremost, good to know he's got a good friend in Nikolaj Ehlers, who's kind of still there for him all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a big week ahead on the road trip. Mike, you got a couple of fun things planned for folks who don't know. Mike will be getting a little bit of some reaction from folks on Blake Wheeler and his situation with that
another old friend,
devastating injury. And also, too, you got a great feature coming up, Mike. I think it's going to run Tuesday now, or which day are you going with?
The plan,
Tuesday? Yeah, okay. So Mike just spoke. You go. You explain
spill the beans, yeah. The Jets were originally set to practice tomorrow in New York. They're actually now not going to skate. This maybe speaks to, and I got a sense in the room tonight, Kenny, they're already like there weren't any long victory laps over tonight's game. They were already focused on what's ahead. They know they're stepping up a few weight classes starting Tuesday night. And Rick Bowness, in fact, he said, we know we haven't played good teams very well, and we haven't shown our best against good teams lately. I think they see this as a test, as a challenge to themselves. Does that mean they're going to beat the Rangers? Of course not. I would expect them to come out with a real determined effort. And interesting that they're banging tomorrow's practice. They're now going to skate on Wednesday in New York when they were originally going to be off Wednesday. So they've switched their day off, maybe to conserve a little more energy. But yeah, tomorrow I'll be writing a story. I had a chance last week to actually we speak of doing one-on-ones in the business, Kenny. I actually did a 1-on-2, which was Connor Hellebuyck's idea, actually, to interview him and Laurent Brossoit at the same time, which actually was a great idea. They played off each other. They had a lot of fun, just kind of talking about their relationship, being job share partners, the success they both had this season, but going all the way back to when they first met, what they thought of each other, why they kind of bonded. Also talked to their agent, and I had a great chat this afternoon before the game here in Columbus with Wade Flaherty, who, of course, has overseen these two guys now on 2 occasions, 2 different stints. And Wade, of course, as always, was tremendous with his insight. So, yeah, looking forward. It's a bit of a feature type read on 2 guys that, quite frankly, Kenny, they may have their name on a trophy by the end of this year because they're in the hunt for the William Jennings as the best goals against average. I think the Jets, I haven't looked after updated tonight, but I believe they have a narrow lead over the Panthers right now for top spot in that department. The only catch is Laurent Brossoit. He's made 18 starts, and apparently the rules say that if your team has the best goals against, only the goalies who play at least 25 games get their name on the trophy. I don't. Wade told me today that he's aware of that. Now, he didn't say I'm aware of it and we're going to do something about it, but they are aware of it. And so, does he get 7 more starts?
Does he? How about just relief? I honestly wondered if he got in today at the TV timeout in the third. To be honest, I'm curious. I would love see how they play it. To be honest,
a little cooking of the books. Why not? You're right, Kenny. I don't know if it stipulates 25 appearances.
I think it's just games. I think so. Yeah.
25.
Anyways.
Yeah,
we'll be watching closely. Regardless, we'll be watching closely.
Well, you're on that last Jets road trip of the year, and we'll see. If they're still fighting for something at that point, or if things are wrapped up, because we might see a little manipulation happening to maybe get something if they're still in the hunt. But yeah, bottom line, it was great to get their insight. They're both having terrific seasons. Connor Hellebuyck's, I would suggest, is certainly the favorite for his second Vezina, and Laurent Brossoit, back-to-back shutouts, 150 straight minutes and counting shutout streak, which will get tested at some point on this road trip, at least once, maybe twice, I expect. And he's gonna make himself some money this summer. And that was the big thing. I don't want to give away my whole story, but Laurent Brossoit was kind of emotional. In fact, he talked about how it's a bittersweet time right now because he's loving his time with the Jets, with Connor Hellebuyck. And as he said, in a perfect world, he would just stay here. But he also recognizes there's probably going to be opportunities elsewhere that through no fault of anyone's just won't be available here. So that these guys are certainly cherishing their time. They really are similar in a lot of ways, and it was neat to kind of hear them discuss it. So yeah, that'll be tomorrow online and in Tuesday's print edition.
Tremendous. And just because we're running low on time, I'll just take the Johnson Group. We've got you covered for myself. And as someone who is in the building, Mike, I think you'll agree. Connor Hellebuyck has the Jets covered in this one, especially in the first period when there was a little bit of lethargic play happening. So I'm just going to give the broad strokes here and hand it out to Connor Hellebuyck under the "We've Got You Covered" from our good friends at the Johnson Group, the OGs. And do you run a small, hang on a second here, sorry. Do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to help give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Mike, keg save of the game, there were a couple. Which one stood out to you?
So it bothers me that I can't remember the specific player. You may know this better. There's a save in the third period. I thought it was Connor Hellebuyck's pass.
I got it. Yes, Alex Nylander on the one-timer on the power play.
The red hot Alec is there.
Indeed,
8 goals in 11 games. Guy who's on his 4th organization now, but really making the most of this latest change in scenery. Yeah, it wasn't big in the sense that it determined the outcome of the game. I thought though that was Connor Hellebuyck's finest save of the game. Showed some real flexibility for sure on that play. So I'll pick the Nylander, the Hellebuyck on Nylander thievery.
Right on. That one I had as well. Honorable mention to the redirection by Cole Sillinger in the, I think it was in the second period. The save ended up being a little bit tougher than it looked in real time. So that is our keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what Mike or I or Sean think. Let us know your keg save of the game by using the hashtag keg save of the game, and our good friends at the keg. The 3 locations in Winnipeg will be there to offer a $50 gift card at any of those fine locations, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our winner of the keg save of the game from last game, and that will go to Steve Thompson, who was in the comments section. Steve Thompson, you know what to do. Email or DM myself or Sean Reynolds in order to get your gift card. And lastly, Michael, Lamplighter, what was your highlight of the goal department of the 7 that were scored this evening? And maybe an 8th that was just disallowed by mere inches.
Yeah, and I thought that I kind of thought in real time. I thought it was a high stick by Morgan Bear, but that they called it a goal on the ice, and they took so long to review it. This is a pet peeve of mine. I'll save the rant for another day. But if it takes you that long, I think the call, I thought they were going to say it was a good goal, that the call on the ice stood. If it takes you that long to find contrary evidence, you're probably, you're spending too much time looking. But anyways, I'm going to say, and it was more about the pass than the goal, but I mean, the Tofoli backhand, what looked like a blind backhander through the legs. And of course the finish by Nikolaj Ehlers that gave him 20 on the year, a nice round number. And it got the second period off, which turned out to be a really important and productive period for the Jets. So I'll say the Ehlers goal early in the second, but mainly because of the Tofoli hot sauce that accompanied it.
Yeah, no doubt. That was a great one. My personal view of tonight, I love that goal also, but just because of the all around the 3, I guess 4 touches, I'm going with Tofoli's first, Mike, just because of the sequence of events. The D-man to Tofoli with a smart, just like, it's a 2-foot pass. Like you think, oh, well, nice, easy play in the NHL. This should be able to be made with ease. But it's not just the play that it's made. It's Tofoli getting it to Monahan. Monahan accelerating through the neutral zone entry, gets it to Ehlers. And oh, by the way, as we talked about with Jason Bukala, for all the folks who say Tyler Tofoli not the swiftest skater, how did Tyler Tofoli find his way up the ice to get to the high slot, to find the perfect pass from Ehlers, and then bury his shot? It was on his stick. It was off his stick. It was in the mesh, and everyone in the Elvis Merzlikins was wondering how in the world did that play unfold the way that it did. So again, and honorable mention to Tofoli's second. I mean, that's just an absolute bar down beauty with the hesitation and just a beautiful play. But I'm going to go with that one there as my lamplighter of the game. And if you want to share your lamplighter with the hashtag in either the comments section or in the comment department, or you can DM or send a note to Sean or myself. And if you do choose your lamplighter and make it known, you will be eligible to win a frosty and delicious 8-pack from our good friends at Trans Canada Brewing Company. If you cannot wait for us to provide that 8-pack to you, you should visit our friends in the tap room at 1290 Kenniston Boulevard. And that brings us to our winner from the last game, and that is Ollie. Ollie, you left a note in the comments section, and I noticed you were in the comments earlier, so you know what to do. Contact myself or Sean and be in touch, and we will get you the gift card to claim your frosty and delicious 8-pack, the Nectar of the Gods, as my good friend Sean likes to refer to it as. Happy to report Sean has sent a note with his apologies for not being able to make the show. He did land after a almost 2-hour delay as usual, but he will be back with us on Tuesday for the marquee matchup.
Make him do push-ups, Kenny. Make him do push-ups.
That's a good one. Yeah. Looks like Ollie again. Whoops. Well, good for you, Ollie. That's how the numbers get drawn, I guess. Good work on that front. Mike, before we get go ahead. Yep.
I don't know if you saw this because I know you just recently caught up with him. As if there wasn't enough good news for Jets fans tonight. We're talking about Rucker and some of the prospects. Colby Barlow had a hat trick tonight.
Oh, there you go. Speaking of, and again, for folks thinking that I was ignoring Colby Barlow, I was not ignoring him. I took the time to speak with him last month. He's having a great second half, doing a tremendous job. And we spoke with Jason Bukala about Colby Barlow the last time he joined us. So if you missed that one, check it out on our YouTube channel. Michael, before we let you roll, just some quick thoughts. I mean, I did notice the exact same thing you did. Jets were happy to get through this stretch of games against also Rans with a 12-1 composite score, but they've already circled Tuesday on their calendar. What are your expectations for the marquee matchup on Broadway at MSG, one of the finest buildings in the planet to enjoy a game?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite best on best, but it's pretty darn close in terms of where these teams are in the standings. And I suspect we get a pretty elite goalie matchup in Hellebuyck and Shesterkin, and
who's the Rangers playing great,
right? And the Rangers still, they've got plenty to play for. Like it's not like they're in cruise control, easing off here. They're still battling, obviously, for top spot in their division, top spot in the conference, and I mean, I know there's a curse accompanying with it, but the President's Trophy is certainly theirs. Potentially for the taking as well. It's also Kenny, and I don't know if he'll be in the lineup. It's Matt Rempe's return from the 4 games. I believe they're calling him the Rempire State Building.
We've seen that one, yes.
Yeah. So his 4-game suspension ended today. Does he go right back into the lineup? Do they keep him out because they're obviously playing well? They're playing well with him. They're playing well without him. I don't know. That'd be another little bit of a sideshow, I suppose. If not that there's a Jet player that probably is too eager to fight him, but another thing to look for there. And yeah, I mean, the Jets, the Rangers is obviously what their next focus is going to be, and then after that, 3 straight games to finish out the road trip against 3 teams that are still trying to hang in that Eastern Conference, wild card playoff fight. And you'll have the quick return of Tofoli and Miller. By the way, Colin Miller, I firmly believe he'll be in the lineup on Thursday. against the
Yeah,
Devils. We know
definitely,
Tyler Toffoli.
if not sooner.
Yeah, right, exactly. If not Tuesday, for sure by Thursday. And so some good storylines there. And then obviously it's always fun to watch Ovi in his own building. I know he had a pretty quiet night against the Jets a week or so ago in Winnipeg, but
Game winner last night, though.
he did up to 19, and so I don't know. Maybe he'll hit the 20 goal mark. He always seems to hit some kind of milestone against the Jets. And I left my favorite hat the last time I was at an Islander game. I left my favorite hat in the media dining area. So maybe they've still got it in Lost and Found, and I can get it back on Saturday. We'll see. As you know, Kenny, I've lost a lot of things over the years. I rarely get any of them back. There's a little part of me that's hoping that they've still got my hat from, I think I was there like a year and a half ago, that it's still sitting there. So we'll see.
I was going to say that the bad news for you with me joining you at the Winnipeg Free Press is that we're not on many road trips together, and I can't collect the shrapnel that you leave behind. But it's been known to happen. But we'll hopefully you find a few of those items on this trip. And as always, thanks for locking it down. Appreciate your insight. And yeah, it's a great week ahead for the paper and the online edition of the Winnipeg Free Press with the stories that you've got in the hopper and the stories that you will continue to tell. Thank you for locking it down. For those wondering, yes, I was on the golf course this afternoon. Kept her in the mid 80s. The putter let me down a little bit, but solid 41 in the back at the Duke. So it was a glorious day.
No Scotty Scheffler round today, Kenny.
Well, I felt solid about the back. I got a little greedy on 18. I was 4 over for the back. I thought I could make a birdie on the par 5, and my the hybrid on the 18th hole, my approach got pulled to the left into the water, but scrambled for a bogey and kept her in the reasonable amount. But we'll be playing with our former colleague Tim Campbell in an almost all lefties matchup except for myself. Jordan Krantz, former Manitoba amateur champion. Travis Fredberg will also, I believe, a former Manitoba amateur champion. It's a great pairing or great grouping. Looking forward to that. And folks, thank you for joining us. And before we go, like we always say, like Sean always says, thank you for keeping with us for these discussions. And thank you to our incredible sponsors who ensure that these conversations are happening. Those sponsors that we are proud to have on board are the OGs from the Johnston Group: Lou Ferlin, Cambrian Credit Union, Trans-Canada Brewing Company, Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi, The Keg, and Pristine Roofing and Siding. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week ahead, and we will talk to you on Tuesday after the Jets and Rangers game. Good night, everybody.